Not every farewell means leaving. Some creatures only need to be seen one last time to know they were once held. Willow's light was once a place where abandoned animals were healed, until the humans themselves began to stay. From Hope, the first dog to lie beside Ellie through the first winter, to Caleb, the hunter who quietly fixed the things she had grown accustomed to handling herself. Then her father returned, without explanation, without calling her name, but still allowed to sit at the dinner table, without being pushed away. Now, the shelter has entered its third spring. Valor still stands on his podium as a living symbol, and Noah has stopped calling himself a guest. When Ellie receives an invitation from the northern hills, where a fawn is trapped after a landslide, she doesn't hesitate, because sometimes what needs to be saved is the ability to believe that someone will arrive in time, even if only once. Caleb's old pickup truck shook violently as the front wheels sank into the soft earth after the rain. Ellie eased off the gas, leaning to look through the trees, the smell of damp moss and wet stone pouring into the cracked window. Noah sat in the passenger seat, clutching the first aid kit, his eyes fixed on the worn edge of the folded map. "Are you sure this is the right place?" she asked. He nodded, pointing to the rocky slope above. "The landslide's up there. I saw smoke from burning leaves. They're waiting." When the truck stopped, a man in a thick sweater stepped out of a makeshift cabin. He didn't say much, just nodded, then gestured for them to follow. Hope jumped out first, nose pressed to the ground as if she already knew what to search for. Shadow trailed behind, limping on his injured leg, but not making anyone wait. Ellie put on gloves, grabbed a flashlight, and nodded at Noah. "Let's go." The group made their way along a narrow trail, cleared with dry branches. On either side, the earth had slipped away, patches of fresh soil still a vibrant color, tree roots exposed like wounds yet to heal. The ground was covered with frantic little hoof prints, scattered and broken in the middle of the landslide trail. Ellie crouched, touching a sunken spot in the earth. It tried to stop here. Noah whispered, "Probably lost its mother." On the other side of the tree line, a faint sound echoed, not a bark, nor the sound of footsteps. It was the noise of a small body gently bumping against a tree as it tried to hide. Ellie raised her hand, signaling for them to stop, then slowly stepped forward. Beneath the leaning branches, a fawn curled up, its hind legs stuck in the mud, eyes wide open and unblinking, not out of trust, but from fear so deep it no longer knew how to run. Ellie didn't move forward right away. She removed her left glove, slowly raising her hand to shoulder height, palm facing up. The fawn didn't budge, but its ears twitched slightly. "You go around the back. Don't make it panic," she said, not turning to look. Noah carefully stepped around, his feet pressing close to the ground, as if afraid to snap a dry twig. Suddenly, Hope moved forward, not quickly, not growling, just taking steady steps. Ellie was about to call her back, but then she paused. The dog stopped to stride away from the fawn, sitting down, her head slightly tilted. The fawn glanced at her, not retreating, not even breathing heavily. A strange silence stretched between the two creatures who had never learned how to trust one another. "I've got the tape," Noah whispered, then pulled out a roll of bandage from his jacket. Ellie nodded, stepping closer to Hope, her eyes still fixed on the fawn. "You don't have to trust me," she said softly, her voice like the wind rustling through the branches. "Just let me stay here with you." The fawn shivered again but didn't run. Ellie crouched down, gently reaching towards hind leg, where the mud had dried into a hard patch. When she touched it, the fawn flinched, but just a little. Noah handed her the gloves, and she slipped her hand beneath the layer of dirt, feeling the warmth still lingering. For the first time that morning, Ellie saw a creature that didn't run away, even though it was still afraid. The rain began to fall in scattered drops as Ellie checked the fawn's pulse. The mud was softening, making it even more dangerous to free the creature from the earth. If it rains harder, the ground slips more, it'll be buried, Noah said, his voice beginning to shake. Ellie looked around. No shelter, no place to hide. Only two hands and a decision to be made. You hold its head. I'll dig around its front leg, she said firmly. Hope stood up as Ellie began to dig. The fawn let out a soft whimper, its body tense but not struggling. Shadow stepped forward, pressing against Noah's back as if to help steady him. The rain started to fall more heavily. Ellie said nothing, only digging with both hands, her fingernails splitting from the hard earth. Noah leaned close to the fawn's head, whispering over and over, "Don't go, don't go, don't go." When the last of the dirt was removed, Ellie managed to pull the fawn's leg free from the mud trap. It tensed, trying to jump, but collapsed again. It's still weak. "Don't let it run," she said, pulling a worn cloth from her bag and wrapping it around the fawn's body. Hope lay down next to it, still silent, as if saying, "I'll keep watch for you." And the fawn, for the first time, closed its eyes in the embrace of A. The makeshift shelter was constructed from tarps, dry branches, and ropes from a truck. Ellie started a fire with the last dry paper bundle, the flames catching slowly in the damp air. The fawn was placed close to the fire, its body covered with a linen cloth, breathing shallow but steady. Noah sat close, his hands wrapped around his knees, eyes never leaving the small creature sleeping. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. The forest was still, so quiet that the soft sound of raindrops falling to the layers of leaves could be heard. Ellie handed Noah a piece of dry bread. He didn't eat it immediately, just held it, then asked softly, "Do you think anyone ever came back to the shelter just to see if the animal was still alive?" The question was simple, yet it threw something at her. Something very old, very painful, and very real. She didn't answer. She just pulled another blanket over Fawn and placed her hand on his shoulder, as if the question itself had silenced her more than the rain ever could. Hope lay by Ellie's feet, her head resting on her lap, as she always did when Ellie needed time to breathe. Shadow stood guard by the shelter's door, not out of vigilance, but as though ensuring the space inside stayed calm. Ellie looked up at the tarp roof, fluttering gently, then said, "Maybe yes, maybe no, but if someone ever came back, then perhaps what they needed to see wasn't forgiveness, but that life keeps going." Noah didn't ask anything more. He just handed her the bread, then leaned his head on the backpack, his eyes still fixed on the fawn, breathing in its first sleep without fear. Ellie was about to close her eyes for a moment when Hope suddenly stood up. No barking, no growling. She simply turned toward the fawn, stepping slowly, her nose nearly touching its chest. Ellie sat up sharply. The fire had dwindled down, now only casting light from the flashlight hanging from a tree branch, but she could still see clearly. The fawn's belly no longer rose and fell as it had before. She pressed her hand against the fawn's chest. There was nothing. Ellie pressed gently, then began to apply more force. Once, twice, 3 times. "Noah, get the emergency respirator," she said, her voice sharp in the silence. He fumbled through the backpack, his hands trembling, then shoved the soft tube into her hand. She placed it over the fawn's mouth, blew lightly, and continued to compress its chest. Mud from its body stuck to her wrist, cold, but it didn't matter. She just needed it to breathe again. "Hope hasn't left its side," Noah whispered, eyes wide. He knelt down on the other side, helping Ellie support the fawn's neck. Shadow stood guard by the shelter's door, as if not allowing anything or anyone to intrude on this moment. Ellie repeated the cycle. Compress, breathe, compress. Her hands ached. Her eyes stung, but she didn't stop. On the 5th attempt, the fawn's chest moved slightly. On the 6th, its legs twitched. Ellie stopped, pulling back a bit. The fawn exhaled a soft sigh, like a breath after a nightmare. Noah held his breath. Hope nuzzled its head into the fawn's belly, and the creature opened its eyes, not looking at anyone, just opening them, as if to say, "I'm not gone." Ellie sat down on the mat, leaning against a wooden post. Her hands shook, but not from fear. It was the first time in her life, She felt she might have lost something she was trying so hard to hold on to. But it hadn't left. Not this time. She looked over at Hope and saw it looking back. No barking. No running. Just sitting there, as if it had known what would happen. Noah whispered. How did Hope know it stopped breathing? Ellie didn't answer right away. She stroked Hope's back, feeling the warmth from its short fur soaked by the rain. Because it once lay next to someone who almost didn't make it. So now it doesn't leave anyone behind. Noah looked at her for a long moment, as if hearing an answer that didn't need any explanation. Outside the shelter, the rain had stopped at some point, though no one had noticed. The sky was slowly brightening as Ellie opened her eyes. The first light of day filtered through the tarp, casting a soft golden hue over the shelter's roof. The fawn was still asleep, its breathing steady, ears twitching lightly with the rustling of the leaves. Hope lay beside it, her legs stretched out, her head gently resting on its belly, as though ready to react if anything disturbed the rhythm of life. Shadow had already left early in the morning and was now lying outside, keeping watch between the people and the forest. Ellie stepped out of the shelter, stretching her arms to loosen her muscles, then sat down at the base of a nearby tree. Noah sat beside her, holding a cup of warm water she had just boiled. He looked at the fawn for a long time, then spoke as if asking himself, "What if we let it go and it can't find its mother?" Ellie was silent for a few seconds and replied, "At least it didn't die because no one came." The answer wasn't meant to comfort. It was simply to state a truth that everyone knew, but no one dared to speak out loud. The fawn woke up when the sun started to shine directly through the canopy. It lifted its head, its legs trembling slightly as it tried to stand. Ellie didn't assist it. She simply stepped back, letting it try on its own. Hope didn't move, just tilted her head, eyes steady and focused. The fawn slowly stepped out of the shelter, walking past Shadow, and for the first time, Shadow bowed his head, as if, for a brief moment, all the creatures there agreed. It was time for it to go. Ellie followed for a short distance. The fawn looked back, not in fear, nor in longing, just a look that seemed to confirm, "I remember this place once being warm." Then, it turned and walked into the forest, its gait still unsteady but unwavering. Each step left a crack in something inside Ellie, and when it disappeared behind the trees, she didn't cry. She simply sat down on the stone step, her hand outstretched as though releasing something invisible from her grasp. Noah sat beside her, not saying a word. Hope sat between them, while Shadow turned his gaze back toward the forest, silent, as if watching over something to make sure it wouldn't get lost again. Ellie turned to Noah, intending to say something about going back, but before she could speak, he said it first. "You know, the fawn wasn't the only one saved yesterday." And for the first time throughout the journey, Ellie didn't feel like she was the only one who knew how to keep someone from leaving. The return trip was quieter than the journey out. No one played music, and no one retold the events that had occurred. Ellie lowered the windows slightly, and the early spring breeze swept in, carrying the scent of damp earth still lingering from the deep forest. Noah sat beside her, clutching the small first aid bag. Inside him, there was no longer the excitement that used to come with each departure from the shelter, only something quiet, deep, as though something within had been touched in the right way. When they reached the shelter's gate, Hope jumped out first as usual, but this time it didn't run toward the kennel. It stopped, looking at Ellie. She got out of the truck and walked over to it, gently stroking its head and whispering, "You did well." Shadow followed slowly, his legs still limping but without the usual wariness. There was no one waiting at the shelter, no hot meal ready. But as Ellie stepped into the yard, she knew they had brought back something that couldn't easily be named. Ellie unloaded the supplies and turned on the faucet to wash her hands, but stopped for a long moment in front of the stainless steel sink. The image of the fawn appeared in her mind, its eyes as it left, and the emptiness she felt in her hand when she no longer held it. She didn't feel regret. She didn't feel relief. She just felt, right, as though all the afternoon she had lived through had led to this moment. when she didn't hold on anymore, and yet still felt whole enough to return to her daily work. Noah entered the medicine room and began cleaning each piece of equipment in the first aid kit. He did it without being told, without complaint. Ellie passed by, pausing in front of the door. "When you have time, I'll teach you how to recognize the signs of circulatory shock," she said. Noah didn't look up. She smiled. Tomorrow, there was nothing particularly special in that answer, but it was enough to confirm one thing. The boy was no longer standing on the outside. That afternoon, Ellie took Hope to the field behind the shelter. Valor still stood on his podium, quietly, one wing folded. But there was something different about the way he stood now, no longer holding his position, but ready. Ellie looked up at him, saying nothing, then turned to Noah, who was walking behind her. "There's one more thing," she said. "Tomorrow we'll remove Valor's leg band." Noah nodded, not asking why, and Ellie understood. He was ready to witness a farewell without needing to call it a loss. Ellie sat alone on the porch as the sun sank lower. The late afternoon light cast a golden hue over the wooden floor, bathing everything in a soft, unnamed color. The shelter was quieter than usual, not because there were fewer people, but because something once painful was now missing. Valor still stood on his podium, unmoving. Noah was in the storage room, organizing the ointments and herb books, a task he had always done with reminders before, now done as it were an integral part of his work. Hope rested her head on Ellie's lap, breathing softly, a signal of peace. Shadow lay near the wall behind them, neither sleeping nor guarding. Ellie held in her hand the leather collar that had once been worn by Valor, a collar that was no longer needed, yet she hadn't let go of it. Once, every creature here needed to be kept. Now, she was starting to learn, if someone is strong enough to go, then let them go. The breeze and forest behind the shelter carried the scent of dry earth and fallen leaves. Ellie closed her eyes, remembering the moment when the fawn had looked back, then disappeared into the trees. There was no drama, no tears, but it made her feel light in a way that was unfamiliar. Her heart wasn't empty. It was simply no longer needing to hold on so tightly. Noah came out, handing her a cup of warm water. "Today, I think I understand why you never named the new animals too soon," he said. Ellie nodded slightly. "When they survive, they'll have a name." She set the collar down on a wooden step and looked up at the podium where Valor still stood motionless, as if waiting for a strong wind. "Tomorrow, we'll remove the collar," she repeated. Noah didn't respond. He simply sat beside her, his hands wrapped around his knees. No words needed. Ellie gazed toward the forest, where the last light was fading. She didn't know which creature she would save tomorrow, nor how long she could maintain this gentleness within herself. But today, she hadn't allowed a creature to die in silence. And today, she hadn't allowed herself to cling to anything else, not even the things that once kept her standing strong. Letter to the future, Ellie. If one day you find yourself holding on too tightly to something, remember, there was a time you let a creature go, without calling, without holding on, without crying, and that didn't make you weaker. If you think letting go means loss, remember the feeling the next morning, when everything was still there, the sunlight, the fields, and a space that didn't leave you empty. Sometimes, what you need to hold on to isn't a creature or a person or a memory, but yourself after everything. Ellie. Not every creature that is saved will stay. Some creatures only need one more night to find their way forward. And some people don't stay with others. They stay with themselves for the first time. Ellie doesn't hold on, doesn't name, doesn't keep a creature just because she needs something to love. Noah no longer asks, "What about later?" because he understands. Now is something worth living if you have someone by your side. As for Hope, she still quietly lies next to any creature that's trembling. No need for teaching, no need for words, just being there. A fawn doesn't know it has been given a name, but has been touched by hands that don't carry the intention to possess. And that is the touch that goes deeper than anything Ellie ever learned in veterinary school. Willow's light doesn't keep every creature around, but it holds onto something deeper. If a creature once trembled and is allowed to leave in peace, then that place deserves to be called home. What about you? What have you let go of, not because you wanted to, but because it was time for it to keep living? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow the upcoming episodes of Willow's Light. Every week, a quiet moment for someone to realize they were never truly alone